Sports on Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's the radio voice of the Chicago White Sox and the founder of Sonic 45, the band. Please welcome Len Kasper to the program. Len, it's great to have you on. How are you?
Hey, John. Just all bundled up on a cold, rainy, drizzly, snowy afternoon in Chicago. Makes you think about baseball.
That's for sure. Winter meetings going on, lots of signings going on. What's been your reaction to all this movement in baseball?
Yeah, it's always fun when things are happening on the hot stove. I tend to just kind of do my homework on where everybody's going, and hopefully by spring training, I'll have it all sorted out that, this guy's here, this guy's there. But even having said that, it always feels like a few guys slip through the cracks, and all of a sudden I'm down in Arizona and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that's right. Jason Hayward is a Dodger. He signed a minor league contract yesterday. So, those are the kinds of things that kind of get you excited for the following year. And I can't wait to get going, especially, and I know we'll probably talk about the White Sox new manager, Pedro Grifol. I've had a chance to talk with him a couple of times, and I'm really impressed, and can't wait to get to know him a little better.
What do you think he brings to the table that maybe Tony La Russa didn't really have?
Well, I think every manager comes at it from a little bit of a different angle, and sometimes what I've noticed is that the messages don't change a whole lot. It's just sometimes when they're delivered in a different way or from a different voice, they might carry some resonance. And I would expect, no matter who was managing this club in 2023, that there would be a lot of bounce back performances, because you had several guys, I would say most, on this club who did not have seasons they expected to have. Now, does it mean that everybody's going to bounce back? Not necessarily, but I do think there's a lot of motivation here after a very disappointing 22. And we all know the talent is here. It's a club that won 93 games 2 years ago. The division is not waiting around for anybody, as we saw the Guardians. I expect them to be very good. I think Detroit, now they're revamping a little bit. They've got a new president of baseball operations, Scott Harris. The Royals have a lot of young talent, and I think the Twins underachieved as well. So I think it's going to be a very interesting division in 23, but I feel good about the White Sox chances.
How do you explain what happened this past season? Why did they not perform up to par?
I think that's a question everybody is trying to answer. For whatever reason, they could not get on a roll. And I think early on had the 8-game losing streak, and they just were never able to really recover from that for whatever reason. I mentioned, individually, just a lot of down years across the board. Really, aside from Dylan Cease, Liam Hendricks, maybe Jose Abreu, even though his home run totals were down, hit for a high average, got on base a lot. Nobody else really kind of stepped up and had that year. Eloy did late when he came back, but he wasn't healthy all season long. So I think it was just a combination of a lot of different things. And for whatever reason, they couldn't get on a roll. And then I give Cleveland a lot of credit, John. The Guardians played a brand of baseball that was very difficult, I think, for the White Sox to play against, and for the rest of the league, for that matter. They seemed to be a very clutch team that came up with a big hit when they needed it the most, didn't strike out a whole lot. It was their year. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
How big of a loss is Jose Abreu's bat going to be now he's with the Astros?
For me, while the bat is kind of the most obvious thing, I think everybody would tell you in this organization they're going to miss Jose the person. He had been a lifelong Sox since coming over from Cuba, came back on a 3-year contract after his first one had expired. And, I'm happy for him that he landed in a great spot and got 3 years with the Astros. And his legacy is cemented in White Sox history. I could see his number being retired and a statue of him at the ballpark at some point down the road. I'm really fortunate that I got to know him and got to see him play on an everyday basis. I think about some of the first basemen I've been around: Derek Lee with both the Marlins and the Cubs, Anthony Rizzo with the Cubs, and now Jose with the White Sox. I've been pretty lucky. Those are three amazing human beings, great players, all very good defenders at first. And, I can't say I'll be rooting for him in the first 4 games of the season because we'll be in Houston. But after that, I hope he does well.
This might put you on the spot, but who was your favorite player to watch of those 3, Lee, Rizzo, or Abreu?
I mean, it's really hard for me to pick one or the other. I think I'll answer it this way: the best individual season I've ever seen, not just among those 3, but any player I've ever watched on a daily basis. And this includes Chris Bryant, who was the MVP in 16. But Derek Lee, go back and look at his 2005 season. I believe he finished second to Albert Pujols in the MVP voting, but he could not be stopped. He did everything: hit for power, hit for average, took walks, hit doubles, hit singles, never missed a play at first base. And that's one of those very special years I was fortunate to witness. I think he led the majors in hits that year. That's how good Derek was. So that's the best individual season I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, he did 199 that season. What was that like for you, too? I mean, that was your first year with the Cubs. You watched Derek Lee almost win a Triple Crown. I mean, how did you feel about that?
Oh, I mean, it was amazing. I guess the only disappointment is that it came in a disappointing year for the team. But I remember a trip to Southern California, and he's from California. I think he had 7 or 8 hits in a row in LA and then San Diego, and it felt like he couldn't be stopped. And I remember talking to him a lot that year. And Derek, one of the things I love about him, and Chris Bryant kind of reminds me of Derek a little bit, that they're very honest and open, and sometimes they just don't have the answer. And he would just kind of shrug his shoulders like, I don't know why, but it works.
Len Kasper here with me on Sports Talk Chicago. Len, talking about the White Sox and their move this offseason. They brought in Clevenger on a 1-year deal. What do you make of that signing?
Yeah, you look at the you look at the history, and when Mike Clevenger's been healthy, and I think even this year he said the knee probably was the culprit in terms of his velocity. When he's been healthy, he's been one of the better starters in the American League. He's got an interesting delivery. He never sits still. He's got the long hair and the tattoos, so he'll be a fun guy to watch. He's always pitched well against the White Sox. I think another highly motivated guy, particularly when he faces the Guardians. In some ways, this is similar to the Cody Bellinger signing for the Cubs, guys who are kind of on a prove-it type deal. And the White Sox needed a starter, and I think he should fit really well into this group.
What's your evaluation of the rotation today? I mean, Dylan Cease coming off a Cy Young-esque season. Now they have Clevenger, a couple of other guys coming back. What do you expect out of them for next year?
Well, I think it's definitely a strength of this team, and probably the biggest reason why the 21 club had the big lead that they had for much of the year is the rotation was great, and that was really pre-dominating Dylan Cease. I think Lance Lynn, by the end of the year, was starting to be the old Lance following his knee surgery. It's a big year for Lucas, who's done a lot of work in the offseason, but he admits, hey, I can talk about all the work I've done, but none of it matters until I go back out there and prove it. Dylan, it'll be really interesting to see how he follows up last year, but he's got a chance to be in that Cy Young mix every single year. He's got maybe the best stuff in the league. And then the Michael Kopech part of it, right? I think it was a big-time learning experience in 22. He had to battle some kind of freak injuries as well, but he's a great competitor, and I think he wants to get up in that 160, 170 inning range. If he can do that, and then Davis Martin's kind of your extra guy. I thought up until the final day of the season, was one of the bright spots of this entire club. The White Sox should feel very good about their rotation going into the year.
I was just going to ask you about Kopech. Do you think he gets up to a higher innings count or an innings limit after his previous injuries and coming up on this season?
I think that would be his goal. That's a question for Ethan Katz for sure. But knowing Michael the way I do, I think he feels he was born to be a starting pitcher. And I think some of those 5-inning starts, he hopes to make 7-inning starts and to pitch as regularly, every fifth day as he possibly can.
So, Len, what's your overall expectation then for the White Sox in 2023 based on what they've done so far and what could be done the rest of this offseason?
Well, I hate getting in the prediction business because baseball's weird, but I think everybody here expects his team to be simply better than it was last year and compete for the division title. I think that is a very realistic expectation. I don't know what the pundits or the experts are going to say, whether they have Cleveland still at the top, but I think again everybody's excited about Pedro and his new staff and a few additions on the field. And I'm ready to go. I can't wait for the first day of spring training, and I think it's going to be a fun 23 season.
Len Kasper still here on Sports Talk Chicago. Len, a few more questions before we finish up. First off, what's it like being away from the Cubs?
It's funny. I don't really think of it being away from the Cubs. I think of being with the White Sox, and I've been embraced by everyone from Mr. Reinsdorf to, as I mentioned, the baseball staff to the great front office people, and I've really enjoyed getting to know all the people inside the organization. And it's a little different for me because I was already in the market and I did have some, I guess, name recognition already, as opposed to going to a different city where you feel like nobody knows who you are or you don't know them. And I found we have a lot of the new friends I've made have been not just the result of me working with a new organization, but the result of connections that they had with friends of mine that I have made over the years in Chicago. So I feel like it's been a quick study in that regard. Whenever you join a new team, you feel like there are 300 people whose names you have to learn. And it didn't take me that long with the White Sox. It's a very family type atmosphere. And again, I give Jerry Reinsdorf all the credit for that and how warm everybody is. So it's been great. I've been here 2 years now, and it feels like I've been here even longer. Still have a lot of friends from the north side. And like I said, I'm still in Chicago, so I'm no stranger.
Are the haters still active? Is everybody still going after you, or is that past now that you've left the Cubs?
That stuff might still occur. I don't really pay much attention to it. It doesn't really affect what I do on a daily basis. And I feel like I've been embraced by White Sox fans. And, that part of it to me has been very gratifying.
What's made White Sox baseball so rewarding and gratifying for you?
Well, aside from the biggest stuff that I just mentioned on a personal level, the team's been really interesting to watch. As frustrating as the 22 season was, 81 and 81, the expectations were high. There were some interesting things that happened. The 21 season was really fun. And then being able to do radio on a full-time basis for the first time in my broadcasting career in baseball has been incredible. My partner, Darren Jackson, is awesome. I feel like we have great chemistry that really started on day one and has only gotten better. Connor McKnight, all the great people at ESPN 1000. And it's just been fun. We laugh every day. We have a blast every 3-hour broadcast or 4-hour broadcast that we do. We always try to keep it light and have fun and just talk baseball. So I always get excited when I'm heading to the ballpark, and I always feel great when the game's over that we've done a good job.
What's the transition been like for you being on TV for so many years and now being the radio voice for the White Sox for the past 2?
Well, I've still done some television, probably 30-ish games a year, but it's good for the brain, I think, to have those different challenges on a daily basis. And my gut is always, when I return from television to radio, it feels really good. So when your gut tells you, oh, this is where I feel like I belong the most, that tells you something. It's definitely a different format on radio than it is on television, and I've embraced that. And it feels to me like I was born to do this, and whether it's just baseball in general or baseball on the radio, what I'm doing right now just feels right. That's the best way I can put it.
What's going to be your goal or dream in calling White Sox games? I know you left the Cubs because you wanted to do radio and be with the team during a playoff push. Is that the ultimate goal now, being with the White Sox?
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal is the White Sox are in the World Series every year, have a deep playoff run at the very least. My first 4 playoff games in terms of being a lead announcer were last year, 2021. And being a local television announcer, I wasn't able to do that before. So that is obviously big. I think the other kind of little thing, opening night this year in Houston will be a national television game. So in the years past, I wouldn't be able to do opening day, which is my favorite day of the baseball calendar. But because I'm on radio, I will be able to call that game. So those are just little things, when you're a part of a team, you want to feel like you can participate in the biggest games. And doing radio now allows me to do that.
Len, before we finish up today, last question. How do you form Sonic 45, and what's the latest on the band?
Yeah, thanks for asking. When I turned 45 in 2016, I started writing songs on my own and came up with an idea for what this band should sound like. I didn't even have really a name for it at the time. And over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, I wrote a lot of songs and then showed them to some friends of mine who thankfully really liked them. And then I kind of recruited 4 friends to be in the band. And we have 1 record out called Space and Time. We're currently working on our 2nd record, which will be called Supersonic. And we play maybe 2 or 3 times every off season when I can work it into my schedule, once or twice during the summer. We've got a big charity gig at Blue Island Beer Company this weekend. And then we play at Hey Nani in Arlington Heights on February 17th, I believe. So sonic45.com is where you can go find all the info and check it out.
Maybe one more question for you. What's it like to be recording and making an album or a record inside the studio with the whole band?
Oh, it's amazing. It's a lot of fun, especially when it's stuff that you've written. To see it really come to life is something that's hard to describe. And it's totally different from my day job, which is what I like. And I think everybody needs to have an outlet like that. And it's really, really fun. Just the process itself of making a song and an album is incredibly satisfying.
Well, Len, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure. Best wishes this year with the White Sox, and looking forward to reconnecting, of course, very soon.
Always a pleasure, John. I'm really happy and excited for you, and continued success.